Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Agasicles, famous from the Rounding Off Infinity Gaming channel on YouTube, the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube, aka Game Logic on Twitch, back with another episode of the Enough to Keep Going weekly games podcast, the People's Weekly Game Podcast, Grown-Ups Who Game, here tonight with another deep dive episode. We'll be talking about news, trends within the industry, not just singular news stories, because everybody kind of does that. This is going to be about what is really moving and shaking the industry from a thematic standpoint. So if you want to know kind of the overall direction that the industry is moving in, we're here to talk about that over the last couple of weeks. Here with me, as always, are my co-workers, my partners in crime, Mr. DBqHams. How you doing, DBQ?
I'm doing pretty good. It was fun to hear you do the People's Champion. So that was nice. A nice callback there. But yes, we've got a lot of news to talk about and plenty to get through tonight. So I'm glad you're at the wheel.
Thank you very much. And my other co-worker, my other partner in crime, Mr. Osiris Prime. How you doing tonight?
I am well. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me tonight. I'm grossly unprepared, though. I'll warn you right now.
We'll be fortunate if we get through this. B, this is going to be wonky because there were like 50-something news stories all told. So if you want to know a little bit about how the sausage is made, we, over the week and with this show format over the 2-week time frame, we post like news stories on a daily basis. So we have a Discord chat. We post news stories that come across our windshield based on our own personal interest in the chat. Before this show, which is every other week, so in the weeks in between we do a GX show. So we're constantly collecting news stories. Once every 2 weeks when we're going to do the deep dive, we take those news stories, put them in the agenda, make the voting open for all the co-hosts to go in there and vote on their 3 stories that they most want to discuss. And then the host winds up culling through all of those and then formulating an agenda for the show. So sometimes it's only 3 articles, sometimes it's 12. We try and neck down, but sometimes there's, subordinate stories and yada, yada, yada. So, again, to give you an impression of, what we tried to pull together tonight, there were 50-something news stories over the last, since the last show in general. And we tried to whittle down to somewhere between 3 and 12 stories out of those 50-something. So here we are. We're going to be talking about 4 distinct themes and trends in the gaming industry tonight. We're going to be talking about security matters. That's been huge over the last week. We're going to be talking about a couple news stories, in particular to the PlayStation 4. We're also going to come back around to cloud gaming, because that's been moving and wiggling and shaking a little bit loose over the last couple of weeks. And then if we have time, we're going to talk about the Assassin's Creed announce. But it's going to be a struggle to get through the security matter. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Last week, about 160,000 Nintendo accounts were compromised in a data breach. This story up on Game Industry Biz, posted by Hayden Taylor. And it was originally posted and then updated. So the intro blurbs to the article, and I quote, Nintendo Japan today confirmed that around 160,000 user accounts have been illegally accessed by third parties. While no credit card information was exposed, affected users had their nickname, email address, date of birth, gender, and country data exposed. Now, a couple of us work in the IT security lane. We're not going to deep dive on pertinent security matters for this. That would be a different show. We would come at that from a different angle. We would put a few more different assurances in place. This is a relatively casual show, so we're going to keep it relatively casual. I want to talk about a couple other news stories that kind of go along with that mix. Shortly thereafter, the Epic Games Store also asked for 2-factor authentication in order to claim your free games. That story up on Eurogamer, posted by Emma Kent. And I quote, if the worrying reports of Nintendo account breaches weren't already enough to encourage you to enable 2-factor authentication on all your gaming accounts, then maybe Epic's new policy will, as the company will periodically require users to enable 2-factor authentication before claiming free games on the Epic Games Store, for the next few weeks at least. In a blog post, Epic explained the change was an effort to encourage our players to take steps to strengthen their Epic account security and will take place from now until 21st May. If 2-factor authentication is not already enabled on a player's Epic account, the player will receive a message encouraging them to set up the security feature when trying to claim a free game. Various other news outlets reported on this. The Verge reported on it. the big thing I'm going to start this off with is I've had a recent experience with the NVIDIA Shield this week, as I was kind of going through my alt gaming track, and you know, the big problem, and the thing I tweeted today is that we really need LastPass or something like that on the Xbox One and the PlayStation on the Xbox Series X and on the PlayStation 5. Um, and we also need good two-factor authentication. We need, in my opinion, hardware-based two-factor authentication. So we need compatibility with like YubiKey or something like that. And while most of my interest is in making that secure, it is also about making it convenient. It is my passwords are complex, right? They're they're in the teens of characters. They are random numbers, letters, symbols, etc. Talk about what a pain that is entering that on the Nvidia Shield or on a console where all you have is the like remote control alphanumeric virtual keyboard data input. Like that is horrific. And when I'm looking at my passwords, I often, depending on where they show up, it is also impossible to differentiate between a 1 and an L. So, a lot of times I'm like doing trial and error to figure out which one it is. Like it is often a 15-minute process for me to log into an account. Then you consider that there are 12, 15, 20 different services that you have to log into on a console the first time. Like this is a major problem. So, in terms of, whether you guys were directly impacted by this Nintendo issue, the issues you guys have with, like, where you have family members on your devices, and in terms of, like, the convenience or lack thereof of getting logged into a console and the different services, like, how overall did you feel the sense of this impact over the last week? And Prime, we'll start with you.
So I saw the initial reports on the Nintendo side a few days before they actually, officially announced that, they'd been hacked. There's, some smaller reports saying, hey, we think, stuff's happening out there, go ahead and there's some news reports saying, do the two-factor and authentication. And also I had seen from Nintendo themselves, not an email at the time, because I think that came later, or I might have saw it later, but just on their main menu of the news feed that they have on the Switch, the two-factor authentication message was up there like almost every day for like 3 or 4 days. I was like, wow, that's weird. So then finally I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to turn that on. So I eventually did turn it on just in case, anything happened. And actually that day, that's when I actually saw more reports coming out. And I think the official report had came out about it. So I just happened to see it, and, I was just like, I probably should just turn it on anyways. I didn't get personally affected by it. Like, I know a lot, the big thing was, people buying V-Bucks from the Switch or Nintendo accounts. And, obviously just other things, buying games and stuff like that. But that was one of the bigger things. But, I checked everything out, and I didn't have any, like, extra purchases or anything on my system, at least. But I do have my son and my wife, I believe, is on there too. Yeah, because she's on my son's account. So it's under my whole umbrella of the family account for Nintendo. So, but yeah, nothing else happened with that. I mean, they don't have any, like, password. I mean, financial stuff on their accounts. So it's basically all just mine. So everything was locked down. Fortunately, I didn't see any issues with that. So that was cool.
So one of the things I struggle with especially is, right, so my kids like have, they're hitting that age where they have like electronic devices in school and accounts are being set up for them, and they are not like the industry standard like approaches to passwords that they're being taught in school. And I'm like, why don't you teach them that like out of the gate? Like, tell them the first password they set up, don't make it your birth date, right? Don't make it your, don't make it a word that you can spell, right? Get them now and teach them. DBQ, same with you. You have family members on your devices. You have shared devices. Did this hit home for you? Has it caused you inconvenience or convenience? And/or do you think the industry is moving in a good direction with regards to showing a little more even-handedness and due diligence with regards to security matters on gaming devices?
So I think the Epic Store piece is actually a really good a step in the right direction, right? Like, the benefit of the Epic Store has been their continued distribution of free games, and it speaks to in part both their the reach of Fortnite. Like if you want to get that stuff, if you're going to be on this and you're going to see that, you're going to have to do this. But it also gets at that idea that you were just talking about in terms of getting people comfortable with two-factor identification from the get-go. Right? I agree with you. Like my both my kids have Chromebooks distributed from their school, right? Like, yeah, get them into a 14 character password from the get go so that when their place of business requires that, they already know they've got a couple, they've got a pattern there. They know what they're doing. Um, in terms of the Nintendo piece, this was this one actually. My account was one of those affected, one of the 160. So it was interesting to watch it kind of roll out in the news. So it was I was running one morning and got an email update that had a new device logged into my Nintendo network. Um, which I came upstairs and asked my kids if they'd logged anything in, and nobody had. So I quickly went in and changed my password, and shortly thereafter, I saw the Nintendo World Report saying accounts were possibly hacked. Then, the next day there were some kind of more official news stories about it, and it wasn't until the third day when Nintendo actually came out and announced it, or at least did a press release within their Japanese site, which was then translated that announced it. So, you know, for people that had this happen to them, it was a couple of days worth of news and rolling stories. If ideally had your emails linked to it and you were still checking things, you should have been able to get in and be responsive. Also, as I told my kids, ever since the 2010 PlayStation Store hack, I haven't,
2011, I think.
yeah, 2011, haven't really kept any credit card information stored in the store just because of that specific reason. So even if my account was compromised, that I wasn't too worried about anybody charging any Fortnite bucks to it. But one of the things that one of the reasons my account was, and one of the pieces that came out in this story is that it was not the Nintendo Switch accounts, it was the old Nintendo IDs. So if you had a Nintendo account set up on the 3DS or on the Wii U, and my account was in both of those places, those were the accounts that were hacked. In some ways, it's potentially telling about the Wii U accounts that there was only 160,000 of them hacked. But yes, right, like that is very much why this, it was running off of an older platform and with some vulnerabilities. And so I think, as you did, Prime, I put in two-factor identification the next day after the kind of story came out and it was official, but I'd already changed my password to something else and gone through the Nintendo Switch network rather than the Nintendo ID account. So, but yeah, I think the more that this can get out there, I know the first time I logged into Uplay, it asked me to do a two-factor authentication. I've got my Blizzard two-factor identification, or my setup. They've got that, and they've had that for quite a number of years because of World of Warcraft. So the more that the industry can continue to move in this direction and encourage people, and the fact that Nintendo is usually one of the last to adopt a technology piece. So I think the point you made, Agasicles, of the fact that we don't have this on a hardware place with Xbox and PlayStation, I think is telling and is needed as we move into the next generation.
Yeah, and I mean the problem is that like it needs to be common. What I can't have is I can't have like one thing uses an Ubi key and then one thing uses LastPass and then one thing like I need this tied to a piece of hardware that I can use in multiple places across all devices. Now, with both the Xbox and the PlayStation standing up on the Azure platform and infrastructure as code, you would think that that would make it easier. You would think that now would be a really good time to have a cybersecurity company come along who offers something like an YubiKey, or for YubiKey to come along and say, hey, I'm going to sell you a thing, I'm going to make it compatible with Azure, that's going to take care of two of the major online gaming platforms right now, right? And tell everybody else, hey, if you want to bring, your storefront or whatever here, it will be immediately compatible. Like it needs to be, it needs to be the same thing. The whole problem with the Nintendo thing, and it doesn't surprise me that this occurred, is that, again, it was broken from the beginning, right? At the root cause of this to me is Nintendo's implementation of this, apologize for using the term, but it's the quickest thing I can reach, of this schizophrenic approach to online interactivity, right? Which is, why do you have one ID on the 3DS, one ID on the Nintendo, Wii or Wii U, and a different thing on the Switch eShop, right? You have multiple IDs. By the way, I don't remember if it's exactly one for every console, but it's definitely at least two different ones that you had. The other thing is, I was frequently confused, right? So my preferred way of buying games, sometimes I go to the console and I turn the thing on and I buy the thing, right? But my preferred way of doing it is actually like I wake up in the morning, I'm down here doing my normal routine, I go onto a computer and I log into that storefront right on the PC and I make a purchase and then I push it to that device. Frequently on Nintendo, I was frequently caught up in this morass of like, which thing is it now? And it presents on different screens and on different URLs, like in different ways. And I'm like, this is just, it's like ridiculous. And then I go back to friend codes, right? So there we are. So at any rate, in the midst of this, another security-oriented story came up. Google wins victory royale over Epic Games, snags Fortnite for Google Play. Now, the reason I put this under the security heading is because at the end of the day, this is a security matter, or at least Google claims it does. This story is up over on Ars Technica, posted by Kyle Orland. It's now been over 18 months since Epic Games shook up the mobile gaming market by refusing to release the Android version of Fortnite Battle Royale in the Google Play Store. At the time, Epic was explicit that avoiding Google's 30% store tax was part of its motivation for the decision, and it seemed to be a successful decision for Epic, which managed to rack up 15 million Android downloads for Fortnite in just 21 days without Google Play's help. But now Epic has given up its fight against the platform and made Fortnite available on the Google Play Store after all. Now, what's endemic to this story is the fact that Epic at least initially rolled this out in the manner in which it did, which is it made you come to their site to get a URL to pull down the installer, and then you install the thing, and blah, blah, blah. However, in the meantime, what Google does is it has made your phone behave in a ridiculously obnoxious manner when you are sideloading apps and pulling things in from its unofficial pathways. Now, that all being said, I have said from the very beginning that while in the meantime I have become a Fortnite player and I've put up with this, right, at the beginning of the day, I think I'll say instead of the end of the day, at the beginning of the day, right, this was a bad move for Android, right? Like, things should be downloaded through the official Google Play Store, and they shouldn't really necessarily be downloaded from other places. Now, that all being said, I am the type of user that what I did was I went into my phone, I allowed the side loading of an application, I pulled down the Fortnite APK, I immediately went back to my settings and locked the phone back down and then downloaded it. Everyone does not do that, right? So this created a pathway or a hole for something bad to happen. There was actually, I think in the Fortnite installer or in a spoofed APK maybe or something, a security flaw that occurred that Epic had to address. I think this was actually in the Fortnite APK. It allowed a security pathway that Google does not normally allow. Android is bad enough as it is. You have Android, you have the AOSP, the Android Open Source Project, right? You have handsets, you have the Open Handset Alliance, you have handsets made all over the world at ridiculously inexpensive prices, and you have people who normally run 2 to 3 versions behind whatever the version of Android is at the time. This was bad enough. I chalk this up as a win overall for users, even though Epic may feel like they've lost and they tried to throw some shade at Google, saying that, this is because Google, right, made a problem. Now, Apple does this too, but what Apple does, and I don't like it because it's highly subjective. What Apple does is, if they like you, they cut a deal with you that doesn't necessarily take 30% off of what users purchase through their app store, right? They, for instance, don't like Amazon. So Amazon would have to pay the 30%. So if you ever notice, if you go via an iPhone or an iPad, you walk onto Amazon, you can't buy, you can't make, help me out with what's the restriction. You can't make digital, like I can't buy a movie, is what I've noticed when I go to Amazon. I can order stuff, I think. I can order hardware goods, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, you could shop through the standard Amazon store, but you couldn't use their digital store. So if
Yeah,
you wanted like Amazon, yeah, and that was just recently changed on iOS as well. Is that you could finally order digital pieces there as well.
okay, but it's some things, but not all, right? Like like I know like with my recently like with my iOS device, like I can't order like a season of Game of Thrones on my on my iPad and immediately watch it. I wind up actually what I wind up doing most of the time is I go to my Android phone, right, and order the thing, and then I pull up my iOS device and view it.
Yep, you weren't able to buy digital purchases through those kind of. Yep, you had to kind of. Yeah, it's the same thing with like the Kindle app was just finally allowed to purchase books. Before you had to purchase them through your Amazon app and then download them through Kindle.
All right. So Prime, you're a security guy. You're also a resident Fortnite player, although I am an understudy. How does this hit you? Do you even bother to play Fortnite on mobile? Is this in the ether so far that you don't even care about it, or do you think this shouldn't have been a win for Google and they put a stranglehold uh, on what was I going to say, on Epic, and kind of railroaded them into making this kind of a play?
Yeah, I mean, as far as playing, I usually don't play on mobile. I, I mean, it was kind of a pain to, have to, open up your phone because I do use an Android phone. I use the Google Pixel actually. Um, open that up, having to download this from their site and, do all that stuff when I could have just gone on like you said, you can just go on the Play Store. I was like, come on, man, really? I got to do all this. But I see it as a win for Google. Just because, I don't want to, it doesn't really matter to me. I can use an Android phone. I've used both. I've used Apple, but I just see it as a win for them because, you know, I don't know, they say, yeah, they didn't want to do that because of, what did they say? I forgot, because of the store tax. But I mean, come on, there's got to be all kinds of, dealings that they have to do on console and all these other things that it has to be, way higher. And, they're obviously making, money hand over fist, with Fortnite, just Fortnite itself. And obviously they've got other games that they can, they pull revenue from and stuff like that. But there had to been something else going on in the background, and even just not like security stuff. So I don't want to really get into that, but I just think there's something else going on between the two with this big fight. I mean, and eventually, they're like, all right, fine, you can throw it up there and do it. You could do this. So I don't know. It was just, something else going on. That's what I just always thought, just kind of a gut feeling, but that's just me.
Yeah, I feel like the changing landscape of the game industry has changed such that this tactic isn't really necessary anymore for Epic. Like a year ago, when Epic was making their Don Quixote charge and trying to say like they were trying to take down the man and wipe away the 30% and give more to developers, yay verily, this was an argument, right? A year later, right, and and this is a thing that frequently occurs. A year ago, Epic was the underdog. We felt bad for Epic. At least some of us did. You know.
In certain areas, I think.
Yeah, right. A year later, I don't really know that this is necessary. The Epic Store is a thing. They've got exclusive deals. They're quickly becoming another one of the giants. They've got plenty of money and cash, and do they need to be fighting with Google? I don't really know. But I tell you what my brother used to always say is win if you can, lose if you must, but always cheat. And that's exactly what people are doing in Valorant. Users can now turn off Valorant's anti-cheat software. So if you're not familiar with Valorant's anti-cheat software, like a lot in the industry, it hits at elements of the kernel layer. So if you think about how your operating system is built from top to bottom, right? Think about hardware being the lowest level, there being a hardware abstraction layer up above that. And then the next thing, think about that as being the kernel. They may not necessarily be in that exact order, but that's the kernel layer is down here. It's very near and close to the hardware. So this is a very relatively invasive level of implementation for anti-cheat software, and that's so that people can't implement cheating stuff at the application layer and be and hide away from other security measures which could be implemented deeper that would let me say that differently. When people do implement cheating software, it is at the application layer because they don't have access to lower levels of the operating system. So because they have access to lower levels of the operating system and can get down closer to the hardware, they implement anti-cheating software at a lower level so that you have whatever you implement winds up being above that, and then they can cut it off and prevent it from actually being actuated. So this article over on TechSpot, posted by Cal Jaffrey. Earlier this month, Riot Games came under, and I'm quoting, earlier this month, Riot Games came under fire over its Vanguard anti-cheat software. The problem was that the program uses a kernel mode driver with ring zero privilege. That's really techie. I'm going to bypass the normal quotation. So, needless to say, this thing is exactly what I said it was. All right, let's just go with that. The reason people are flipping their wigs is because if you remember, you may not be old enough. Like a lot of you gamers are young guys. You don't keep all this stuff straight. So I don't
there you go, shaking his fingers, talking about you kids out there.
Okay, boomer. Earlier in the century, what we had was, if you remember, before the optical media wars, the hot ticket in IT before that was the music wars. So along came Napster, and there was this whole argument about people shouldn't pay for music, and the DCMA. Everybody was trying to get their money when they didn't really do anything, and so the middleman, the publishing warehouses were trying to make sure that they got paid, and yada yada yada. So Sony, which is one of the major five. There's another thing that most people don't know. Before the whole indie movement, there's only really like 5 companies that control basically all the world's music. Essentially, Sony is one of them. Sony implemented on its CDs a rootkit, so whenever you would put the CD in a computer to have it play it, it would, without your knowledge, install something at the kernel level layer in your computer. That's not that big a deal. However, what would happen would, you would stick the CD in, play your music, yada yada, you're happy, this thing installs. 3 days later, you go to boot your PC, and it doesn't come up, right? You get a spinning bubble. Or you run a common application that you've run 99 times before, and it would crash. So all this weird behavior. It was a crappy rootkit. Not a big deal if it had been relatively pristine, but it was bad. So people are flipping out because the fact that Riot implemented something at the kernel layer became public. Now, for those of you who play Apex also implements a kernel level anti-cheat software implementation. So does Fortnite. So basically, most major games that people care about and that suck up tons of game time and viewer time use kernel level implementations to keep people from cheating, because most people care more about cheaters than a company getting into your kernel, as I frame it. Now, that all being said, again, we go back to, if it's relatively pristine, this isn't that big a deal. It becomes a big deal when that kernel implementation causes instability, causes your computer to crash, causes wonky behavior that you didn't ask for. So DBQ, A, is this okay that they implemented something at the kernel layer? B, is it okay now that they've added a switch in there so that you can turn it off? And what does that mean? What does that mean to have an anti-cheat implementation if I'm a cheater and I can just turn it off?
Yeah, right. I think that's the question that does that become different queues, like people that have it on versus people that have it off? I am sitting here looking at our co-host playing Destiny 2, who's not on the show tonight, and Bungie has come out with numbers on PC for Trials of Osiris, and 1 in 6 PC players are cheating. that is significant, and they don't have a good anti-cheat aspect here. I at first, as someone who survived the Napster wars and had my gateway computer back in the day, it was the idea of something at the kernel level still makes me go, But the reality of this is that if Valorant is trying to make them play, and rightfully so with Riot, to be an esport, that you need a stable and consistent and reliable anti-cheat piece in there in order to make it viably competitive, right? Like if you can just turn it off, then no, this doesn't work as an esport. The reason that it is in Fortnite, the reason that it is in Apex and others, is that it's there because it provides a layer of consistency for the player experience.
Now, let me ask you, Prime, before I start talking about some of the other leaks that happened last week. Riot is doing this because they are trying to make Valorant a thing. Now, there's been all sorts of stories about Valorant, right? People were spamming, replay VODs to try and drop beta keys the whole time. First of all, tell me if you feel the same. My personal feeling about Valorant is I'm not playing your game unless you make it convenient, and handing out keys, onesie twosie to people by choice is not a way to make your game convenient enough for me to play. Great Scott, we just had Apex drop the thing out of the blue, like Shadow dropped the thing to everyone, right, a year ago. I don't understand why Riot is taking this, what I would call a stingy approach to rolling their game out. So, my big question for you, again, being the resident multiplayer, competitive, esports-ish, first-person shooter guy, is does Valorant even matter? Like, why should I care about this?
Oh, you might be asking the wrong person about that. Yeah, Valorant's not really my cup of tea. I mean, that gameplay style. As far as I know, it's like kind of like oh crap, no, I forgot the name of the game.
It's more like Counter-Strike. I mean, it's
Yeah.
got that kind of. It's got a number of modes similar to Counter-Strike.
Okay, yeah. So it's not really my cup of tea, but I mean, I can see what they're trying to do. They're obviously trying to make, they're trying to throw it out there to get it into the, you're wearing the shirt into Twitch or into Mixer or into, YouTube gaming and stuff like that. They want it out there and they want it, people talking about it, and they want, the big, hit, I guess, even though, I mean, these are the guys that made, League of Legends, I believe, right? So, I mean, they have the base to stand on, so I don't know why they're doing this kind of thing, like with the just kind of onesie twosie keys. I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. I don't even know why they would want to do it like that. But
is this a bit of what Nintendo has been accused of and Sony has been accused of creating false demand through limited supply?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it could be. I mean, first of all, because I like I said, it's not my type of game. But I mean, is this just a beta game right now, or is it full? Is this a full release right now? This is beta.
It's just beta.
But,
okay.
But I mean, I think that's a question. It's like a Google beta is what I would call it, right? Like they've rolled the games out. Tons of streamers are playing it. They're dropping beta keys. They, if you compartmentalize components of the business model, they have a piece of the business model that makes this thing seem like a beta in terms of its limited supply. Everything else associated with the business model is as if the thing has been let out into the wild, right? Like, so the presence of this thing in the news cycle, the anti-cheat implementation, the tournaments like that are being organized around it, like everything else sounds like League of Legends, right? And then you have this very tiny, very quiet voice soundtrack that says, oh, but it's just in beta, right?
Well, that's like saying Fortnite was in early access for the first 3 years of its multi-million-dollar.
It still is.
It still is, yeah.
Yeah.
It's never been officially released. And all right, I'm going to go on a tangent because that's what we like to do here. Can we stop calling betas, really, please? Because I don't know, Agasicles, you might have seen this or maybe you've noticed this, at least on the consoles. I'm not sure on PC. I'm assuming it's the PC too. But Warzone, right in the corner there, beta. It says beta there. So.
Oh, really? I didn't even realize that. Like,
yeah, it does say this is at least on the Xbox. Like I said, maybe PC it's like full release. I don't know why that would make a difference because I don't know. This is weird, but yeah. So everything's a beta now. We got to do betas for everything now, and I don't know. I mean, you can even go back to Minecraft. It was kind of the first one that was kind of in beta for like 2 or 3 years, I think, before it was officially released. I think right before it got bought, I believe.
well, this goes back to a thing that I really want gamers to understand. So I'm going to get on my soapbox now, right? Like the reason we do this and the reason why we say gamers should come by and gamers should listen is because there is a demographic of people who plays games who don't understand the way things work, right? And it's not their fault, right? It's because the information hasn't been made available, but the information also hasn't been made clear. The information hasn't done like the crosswalking that we do to make sure that you understand why of a thing, right? Those labels only mean things to people in terms, well, they do mean things to people, but they are only there so that the companies can deny accountability and liability, right? Like, as a developer, as a coder, like, it doesn't matter to me what you call a thing to me or my developers or my coders, right? What matters is, do I have to support it? Is the thing out in the wild? Do I have to answer questions about it, right? Because as long as it's within our development environment and nobody's using it, then I don't have to talk to anybody about it, right? But the moment I have to talk to a human being about it, you can call it whatever you want to, right? I still have to maintain it, right? As soon as somebody gets to have a voice and participate in that process, that's the key difference. So, calling something a beta doesn't make it a beta. Calling something a beta just gives you and the legal shop wiggle room to be able to say, I have to honor the warranty or I don't have to honor a warranty, right? So, right, I mean, that's a key thing. That all being said, one of my big desires is I want the industry to standardize, or at least I want a company to standardize, so that when you go to Xbox and something is called early access, you understand what that is, right? We've been on the show and we've swam through months of like, oh, Xbox doesn't have early access. What do they call it now, DBQ?
That's a good question. I thought it was still early access.
Game preview?
Yes, yeah, that's
Game
it.
preview.
Right,
Yes,
right. When that first came along, like DBQ and I were actually like, what the heck is is that the early access equivalent? Is there something different? What does it really mean in legalese? Why don't you print that on the box, right? Or make it patently obvious to somebody. So yeah, I agree with it. Hey,
well, that's the other thing too is they're making boxes for these betas and game preview things and stuff like that. I mean, that happened with PUBG. There was actual physical box out there for it. And so it's like, wait a minute, how can that even be possible? So I don't know. That's a whole different discussion.
Yeah, I mean, it goes hand in hand with we go back to the whole early access term on PC, right? It's not early access or a beta if I have to pay for it, right? So why are you calling it that? So let's go ahead and talk about the PlayStation 4. Over on GameIndustry.biz, The Last of Us Part 2 leaked online. Major spoilers begin appearing online after gameplay and cutscenes leaked. I hate to report on this type of stuff because I don't like to give popularity or credence to bad behavior. The only reason I would contend that we are talking about this, or at least why I put it in the slate, is because it is tightly coupled to the notion of a release date that was announced along for Last of Us Part 2. Over on GameIndustry.biz, in an article posted by Hayden Taylor, a major leak has spread spoilers for The Last of Us Part 2 far and wide across the internet. Videos of leaked gameplay, cutscenes, and developer menus are now being discussed and dissected by gaming communities. A detailed thread collating the leaks can be found on Reset Era. The other reason I bring this up is security is not just about protecting consumers, it's also about protecting the companies. Let's talk about predominantly the release date. Last of Us Part 2 is now coming June 19th. Ghost of Tsushima is delayed. DBQ, is it delayed indefinitely?
No, it's coming in July. Coming late July. July 16th, something like that?
Yes, July 17th. So,
yep.
Help me out here. You're a PlayStation 4 player. Swiss is a PlayStation 4 player. I'm a PlayStation 4 player. This is the only... I shouldn't say. This is one of the two out of the three consoles that actually has new content coming this year. It was already a struggle that there were going to be new games coming to this console when quite honestly, like I look at the thing and I expect COVID-19 rate notwithstanding, let's just assume that that's taken care of. I'm looking at a console that I'm planning on walking down to GameStop and selling, right, before 2020 is out. So right now, I think that that's going to be compatible with PlayStation 5. I don't know that for certain. What does this whole thing do? Let's not even, I mean, you can talk about the leak if you want to, but really what I'm getting at is this thing has moved to the right. The date has been shaky. Some of these delays between Ghost of Tsushima and The Last of Us Part 2 are only 3 weeks. What does that really do for a developer? What the heck is that? What does it mean? Thoughts?
Yeah, I could see the Ghost of Tsushima one getting delayed further. In some ways, I'm really surprised that that is July. I'm surprised actually at both of these because what was it, 2 weeks ago that Sony came out and said Last of Us 2 was delayed indefinitely. And kind of the assumption at that time, I mean, we're still kind of in the middle of COVID-19, but at that point, it seemed like remote work was going to be the norm for a long period of time. That this, especially out in development areas on the West Coast, that this was going to be a major impact. The conversations that I heard around that, and I actually think make a whole lot of sense, is that this could easily be an August game. It could even be a September game. That given where we're at in terms of a country or a world and the economy, that a discounted PlayStation 4 with new content versus a brand new $500 plus console might be a great way to bring people into an ecosystem, right? And get them in that infrastructure and into the PlayStation Plus network. So yeah, the fact that now it's only June, which would be, realistically, this would have been 3 weeks, 2 weeks after E3, if that would have happened. It's not that late at all. I mean, it's a relatively normal build-up to have something then kind of drop at that point, and so uh, I think it's fine. I'm surprised at how early it is. I wouldn't be surprised if it's more. We do know that it is going to be compatible with PlayStation 5. We don't know how, but we know that at least you're going to be able to play it to some degree, right? Like Sony's already come out and said the top 100 games or the majority of top 100 games. It's pretty realistic to think that these are two of their big tentpole releases for that console, so they're going to make sure that they work on that. We don't know what other bells and whistles it's going to come with it or how fast their loading speeds are going to be. But you know, I guess I am the piece here that is more interesting is what this looks like come how they bundle things come fall. Like
So this is part of my question is, right, so going back to kind of does this story matter? Like, do I bother with The Last of Us Part 2? And do I bother with Ghost of Tsushima now, or do I wait? Now, let me compound with that. Normally, I don't flinch or even bat an eyelid at leaks, right? They happen. I tend to ignore them. They're not official. They don't mean anything, right? The type of person who's going to play a leaked game or who speculates around a leaked game is the type of person who doesn't tell you that they have a zombie bite, right? So, but now maybe I was already planning on delaying and waiting and trying to black myself out so that I didn't find out pertinent pieces of The Last of Us Part 2 before the launch of the PlayStation 5. Does that exacerbate the problem now that there's a big major, like, not a small leak, right? Not like Star Wars details coming out, but like the whole major thing.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I have not seen the leak. I've been intentional about not trying to find it. Um, I think for you, for people already invested in this hobby, I think that it probably accelerates the desire to play this game. And that there's probably some of this like, okay, if I know this, I just want to play it now and get into the rest of the story. That for people that are on the periphery that don't even know that this happened, I think that this leak doesn't necessarily make a difference. I think what makes a difference is when these games get bundled with the PlayStation 4 as the discounted holiday piece, as the economic PlayStation bundle. So
So Prime, I know you're not a PlayStation gamer, and I feel you, DBQ. You think about like the Last of Us Part Two, like collector's edition, PlayStation 5 in the launch window, right? That's a big moneymaker. Prime, I know you're not a PlayStation 4 player, but you come from the lineage and from being a PC gamer and stuff. So one of the things that like I frequently like to do is, for instance, right? It's interesting that we're not talking about the Crisis remake tonight, but Crisis drops and I play it and I have a machine that barely runs it, right? The whole thing about people are like, why are you playing a 5-year-old game? Well, I'm playing a 5-year-old game because now I have new hardware and those games run better, right? And it's like really awesome to see how Crisis runs, on a GTX 800 series, right? When it came out, when like the 600 series was around, right? Or whatever it was. Is there value added in playing The Last of Us Part 2 or Ghost of Tsushima on the PlayStation 4, right? So we think about somebody like Swiss or like even like you guys, right, are talking about like not buying a console in the launch window. Is it worthwhile to play it on this generation's hardware and then like next year, if you buy like a PlayStation 5 or DBQ buys a PlayStation 5 or whatever, is The Last of Us Part 2 like the type of game that you go back and like replay sections of it to kind of see how it looks in 8K and like any of us are buying 8K televisions,
Yeah, 4K TV.
Right? I mean, how do you think that's worthwhile? And then how do you feel that stacks like so the PlayStation guys? Let's say the PlayStation guys are playing The Last of Us Part 2 again next year, while you and I are playing Halo Infinite on Xbox.
Uh, I think it is. I think it is. It's good that if you want to play it now. Well, like you said, at least for me personally, like even for the Xbox side, I'm probably not going to buy the next Xbox right away. So I will be able to still play Infinite on my one at least. I got a One X, so I mean it should run fairly decent on there. Obviously I can always pick it up later. I don't know. I will buy one eventually. It's just probably not going to be day one. I'm saying that probably. I'm saving myself there for any future episodes where I tell you, hey guys, look what I got. But no, there's going to be people out there, even, we all, obviously we all have family and, stuff happens and, sometimes maybe we just can't, buy the system right away. That happened with the Switch with me. I didn't buy a Switch right away. And I wanted to, but, I had stuff around the house that happened and, I just couldn't afford it at the time. So, I will be stuck with that old hardware. And, you could play it and I think it'll be fine. To be honest with you, I don't see the big graphical difference. And that's just me, because once again, like I said, I don't have 4K TV technically, but I do have a 4K monitor, which I'm actually looking at right now. But so obviously I'll be able to use that if I do get the Series when I get the Series X. But I think there's still some some validation for you to play it now, even if it's just like, hey, it comes out in June. I want to play it now. I mean, obviously there's leaks. I was going to say it comes out in June, and I don't want it spoiled, but obviously it's it's out there technically now. But still, the same thing kind of happens. I don't want to I don't want to have things spoiled, or I want to be part of the conversation. Now, to me, that doesn't ever. I mean, I've never really been that kind of person, but there are people out there who like to they like to do the water cooler talk, and be in the know and not kind of fall behind on those kind of things. Obviously, if it's something big like this, and I'm sorry, what was this? Was the second question? I totally forgot.
I don't even remember.
Okay. Well, let me just say this other thing
that you and I have both done, right? Is going back once we got the X, was to go back and play some things or to reinstall something and to look at it compared to how does it run on the original console versus the new console.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just kind of it's kind of weird to say, but human nature, and you want to go back and say, okay, like you said with Crisis, like, oh, I got this upgraded hardware. And I want to see how it is. How I want to see it, in all its glory. So yeah, I mean, I'd probably do that. And I think a lot of people would do that too, just to see what it's like. Now that I have this big, supposedly the best, system out there right now. So I think that's just natural to want to do that.
Although it's interesting. It would be interesting to track and to talk about how it progresses, right? Because that's getting more difficult, right? Like I used to do a ton of that. I don't do it as much now because there's more stuff. Right? Like, am I going to go back and play Crisis, or am I going to bring up Google Stadia and play something on there now? right? So
Yeah.
before we get talking about those cloud services and all the things that are at our fingertips, DBQ, there were a few other things that went along with the PlayStation 4 last week. I think some things associated with that are built on like the same engine. So
Yeah, let's go ahead and hit those real quick. So we had the announcement, or kind of the rumor leak aspect of Horizon Zero Dawn sequels coming out. Sequels with a plural. It is reasonable and assumed that there would be some type of sequel to Horizon Zero Dawn. It was one of the few new IPs that came out of the PlayStation first party Guerrilla Games. It's also pretty reasonable to think that at this point, because the Guerrilla Games head is now the head of Sony PlayStation Games platform, or whatever title he has, that uh, that his former company and his developer there and their IP is going to see a little bit of love and support. Aloy has was a big hit both critically and ended up selling significant numbers, up to 10 million copies. So thinking that if there's a sequel is not surprising. Thinking that there is a potential trilogy coming might be, I would say it might be a little surprising, but this is also Sony that had, you know, Final Fantasy VII remake coming this month in how many sections that we have no idea about, and how many generations it's actually going to take to complete. So yeah, it's great to have some sequel plans. Whether or not they all come to fruition within the next 5 years, who knows? So
do
that was one story, and the other piece was building on that same engine. That there was the port for Death Stranding, which was going to be coming to PC. It just got pushed back a month or two, and now it's coming in mid-July.
yeah, and that'll happen. Do you think Horizon Zero Dawn and Guerrilla games specifically is kind of the PlayStation 5's Uncharted and Naughty Dog?
Yeah, I mean, I think so, because I mean, for both good and ill, right? Like Uncharted and Naughty Dog became, Nathan Drake and his untucked shirt became their de facto model, and it pushed the system hardware, and it allowed for a lot on the PlayStation 3. And now coming into the PlayStation 5, it certainly has the capacity to do that. But if it actually becomes Uncharted and Naughty Dog, it also starts to feel worn by the time it gets into the third of the sequel. And how do they make that feel new? Part of the plan announcement here is that there's a co-op mode coming. So that is potentially one way that they spice things up a little bit, and change the recipe a little bit. But we'll see. So yeah, I could totally see that this is Guerrilla Games' time to shine. I think Sony would have liked to have Guerrilla Games' former sequel or multiple iterations of, oh, what was that, Liberation or Killzone, right?
Killzone,
uh,
yeah.
yeah, right. Like now this is the time that they've certainly put a lot of effort into this company over the years, from the PlayStation 2 all the way up through now. So to see them get a chance to shine a little bit is both probably vindicating from a company standpoint, and good for the staff at that development studio as well.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I'm just saying, you said it yourself. Like a Naughty Dog guy wasn't the guy who got promoted, right? Make it a little too boardroom right there. Hey, let's talk about cloud gaming. So one of the things that I've done over the last couple of weeks is I've gotten refamiliarized with Google Stadia. I've also had an opportunity to take GeForce Now out for a spin. Let me tell you, shaking my head. Over on The Verge, in an article posted by Nick Stat, NVIDIA's GeForce Now will lose access to titles from Xbox Game Studios and Warner Brothers. NVIDIA's GeForce Now cloud gaming service is losing access to more titles later this month, the company announced on Monday. Starting April 24th, GeForce Now will no longer be able to play titles from Microsoft's Xbox Game Studios, Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment, Codemasters, and Clei Entertainment. Without Xbox Game Studios, GeForce Now can't access popular titles like Halo, the Master Chief Collection, or games in the Gears of War or Forza franchises. say bye-bye to Gears Tactics. Warner Brothers Game Division is I added that. That's not in the article. Warner Brothers Game Division is another popular publisher owing the rights to series like Batman Arkham games developed by Rocksteady and Mortal Kombat titles from NetherRealm, especially when you consider all the rumor mongering that is going on that there is a new game inbound from Rocksteady sometime in the next, I'd say, year to year and a half ish, right? That's a major blow. So this kind of started the rock slide. There's a lot of things that are caught up in this swirl that I think make it relevant. You had physical game sales on the decline, right? You had Google Stadia come out and offer a 2 month free. You had them drop the notion of what Prime. What was the thing called before? I just call it Stadia free, but like the free tier of Stadia was called something else.
I don't remember if they
I
actually
think
had
it was
any.
just Stadia, right? Because then you had
Yeah,
Stadia Pro was the subscription model.
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha. We have the Stadia Connect come out, which I'm going to let Prime talk about in a lot more detail. You have one of the things I posted on my blog is you have um, the fact now that these cloud services are now a competitive area for companies like Microsoft yanks its games from GeForce Now. They have pulled it from a service. Now, why is that? One might say, well, maybe because I'm doing Project X Cloud and I'm putting my games on my own cloud service and I don't really want them out on other cloud services, right? So it's becoming a competitive vertex for these companies. Prime, how important do you think this is in terms of GeForce Now? Also, go ahead and talk us through the Stadia Connect and what was announced. And how does this set things up between GeForce Now, Stadia, Project X Cloud, in terms of what games are available, and who's losing, right? Why does this matter?
Well, I don't know if anybody's actually losing. I suppose. Well, I suppose GeForce Now is losing, is losing since they're losing a lot of games right now, like you said. But well, let me get into that to Google the Connect right now for just a quick second here. Just kind of, they didn't have a whole lot of games here that when I'm looking at when I've looked during the week and even at this article now. I guess some of the big ones are Player Unknown's Battlegrounds is coming to Stadia. So there's different tiers there that you can buy from the base version or the Pioneer Edition, which gives you like skins and stuff. So, and I believe if you have the Pro version, you actually get the game for free, if I remember correctly. Not in this IGN article I'm reading,
Yep,
but
that's
in
correct.
a
That's what
different
I
one. Okay.
remember seeing as well.
Yeah. So you got that one. You got a few EA games, or at least one EA game coming out fairly soon, which is Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. And then you'll get Madden and FIFA, which actually I don't think come out until next year. If I also read that correctly in one of the other articles, excuse me. And then some of the smaller ones you got. These first few are kind of the first on Stadia games. So it's Creta, which is you can create multiplayer games and share them online. You got Get Packed, another 1 to 4 player game. You have Wave Break, which is just like a kind of like a wave racing jet ski kind of a game. You got Ember, which is also Stadia and PC. Zombie Army 4, Dead War is coming out. And I believe those are all the exclusives. And then you have Mission. Actually, I'm sorry, that's still Zombie Army. There's like a DLC, I believe, that's coming out with that one too. You got Octopath Traveler and Rock of Ages, excuse me, which is a defense style game, tower defense style game, excuse me. So
So,
again, some. Oh, go ahead.
so I so want Stadia to be a thing. There's some goodness there. There's some good technology, bandwidth, blah blah blah. Yeah, okay. Now I've got Stadia, Project X Cloud, GeForce Now. I'm going to go ahead and throw some other services in the mix because I think these things all fall in the same pool, even though they're delivered to you differently. You have Apple Arcade, you have the Google Play thing, right? That's a subscription, right? All of these things are subscription-oriented services. Who's winning, and which one is the most optimal choice for my $5 to $10 a month?
Well, who's winning? I would probably say Apple Arcade is probably winning right now, just because that's more the most. It's the most unintrusive of all of these. Like you can, if you already have iOS and you're in that ecosystem, boom, it pops up. You can sign up, and then you got your games that you can play on there. So I think technically, I think they're winning as far as like the cloud, these bigger kind of cloud based services. And that's tough.
See, I'm going to say, I'm going to jump in and counterpoint that is that Apple may have more devices in people's hands, but whether or not they're going to be willing to pay for a subscription would be a question. And I think this also tees up a couple articles that just came out in the last day in terms of Microsoft announcements related to Game Pass subscribers, hitting 10 million Game Pass subscribers, that is a significant number there for Microsoft as well. So as we think about that these are not free accounts that Stadia is touting in terms of its 10 million registered users, that these are active subscribers. And so I think that from a Microsoft standpoint, that's not a bad number to tout at the same time that Google's trying to push out their free accounts as success.
No, yeah. Go ahead, I guess, because you got to say something.
It's a bit of a cheat, and it's definitely anecdotal, and it's definitely pedantic. For me, I don't put Xbox in the same bucket, right? I get it. I'm guilty hypocritically there because I junked Apple Arcade into the same bucket, even though it's not a cloud service, right? But just as far as like how I look at what money is going out and like the type of stuff that I put in the same space, that I go, do I do X or do I do Y? I don't go, do I do Game Pass? Game Pass, I just go, partially because of the way it's modeled and the way it's priced right now, I go, why would I not do Game Pass if I'm already a PC player and I already pay for Xbox Live Gold, right? So there's a bit of a cheat there, and maybe that's the cheat that Microsoft wants you to make, right? Right? Whereas I would say the choices between Stadia or Project X Cloud, I know that they're not priced the same, right? It's slightly different business model, but still, in terms of use case and how I get there, those are things that I more so, co-locate. For me, the key difference is GeForce now is not a convenient service, right? I realized that this week. Stadia is a heck of a lot easier. So if I got to make a choice between where am I, let's talk about time, right? Because that's more important to me than money in a lot of cases. I go, am I going to spend 2 hours tonight playing Stadia, or am I going to try and spend 2 hours tonight playing GeForce Now? I'm going to spend 2 hours playing Stadia, right? When I make that choice. So I don't know. It's some interesting things. Prime, what else did you want to mention as far as cloud gaming goes?
I think that was it. Actually, no. Just some other kind of statements, I guess, on my side. I mean, Stadia's. I don't know what it is with Stadia because I tried the service and I liked it, and at the time I couldn't justify it just because of the data cap that I have. Now that's not a problem, unfortunately. I guess you could say, on one respect, because obviously we don't have data caps right now on our internet services, or most of us don't. I would assume now, but I guess the other factor in this too is do I want to? Because the way I would have to play it, for me at least, for Stadia, is either a phone or I can play it on my. I got like a little smaller Dell XPS laptop. Do I want to? I obviously don't want to play on the phone, at least for me, because it's Google Pixel, fairly larger phone, but still it's a smaller screen. I guess I don't know. I guess it's kind of. I'm trying to look for my Switch right now. I don't have it out. I mean, the Switch is probably not too much larger than that phone. I mean, it's a little bit bigger, but it's not a huge difference. But I don't know what it is. I just kind of like just the way the Switch feels, and the controller is a big part of it too. I don't like the Stadia controller at all. And yeah, I can pair other controllers if I wanted to, but even that's kind of a hassle, or at least it was. I haven't really tried it lately. Because you had to have it plugged in, I think, to like PCs and stuff. You couldn't just have it wireless or Bluetooth or whatever, the connection. So there are to me there's some stumbling blocks still. And I think that the biggest one is the controller, just because the way the sticks are placed. It's the parallel sticks instead of offset, and that's just a preference. That's totally just my thing. I don't like that, when they're side by side like that. It just, I don't like it. And unfortunately, I can't speak for GeForce now. I haven't tried it, or probably won't, because I don't have PC library like that, or get into that. But I think, and you kind of mentioned this with Xbox, they're kind of in a weird and good position, because they have, xCloud, which I believe is still in beta. I don't think that's rolled out yet. I don't think they even plan to roll it out, officially, even this year. They
Yeah,
were going
I
to.
still haven't been. I've requested an invitation to the iOS part of the Project X Cloud beta, and I've gotten acknowledgement of receipt, but I haven't been cleared to get into the iOS side yet.
Yeah, and for them, that, I mean, I've tried that a little bit. I think I mentioned it before on the show, and that was a great service too. And Stadia was a great service too. I never had any technical problems with it. Same with XCloud. If I had to choose though, I mean, Xbox would be better, because you can stream, which I still haven't gotten that to work, and I think that's just like a beta thing on my side, because supposedly it's supposed to be open, but I can't get it to work yet. But a stream from my actual console. But I can just do all the other free games that are up there on through the pass right now. So I mean, I've never had that issue. But then, like you said, they have Game Pass also, where it's you get a ton of games if they can pull that into XCloud, which they kind of are right now. And I think it's just because of the beta thing. I mean, that's going to be a huge thing. But I think ultimately for them too is, how are they going to package that, or is that going to be packaged with something? Is it going to be totally separate? XCloud, and Game Pass, and you got Games with Gold. So you got all these different things spinning around with them. That I think they have to kind of get it under control, and maybe kind of just put it in one bucket, instead of having it kind of everywhere right now. And I think they got something there, but right now, obviously there's just too many moving pieces on their end. And once again, like I said, it's still beta, so we're still trying to figure out, they're still trying to figure out all the kinks and all that. So, yeah, I think that's all I have to say. In a roundabout way.
No, it's interesting. I mean, potentially we're looking at the consoles being delayed, but it's there are some interesting evolutions that we're lining up to see probably in the next generation of consoles. And it's not necessarily about the hardware, right? One of the most interesting things that could potentially happen is, as you mentioned and as DBQ has mentioned, is how does Microsoft bundle these services? What makes sense in the world that we're in a world where there is Amazon, and they just say, hey, you pay a rate, you pay $85 and you get these 10 things. Now over the next 5 years, let me like drip drab like number 11, number 12, number 13, number 14, number 52, you're saying $85. Now when I jack the price of that to 85, from 85 to 109, you don't bat an eye, right? Because you go, great Scott, like so in that type of environment, like it makes no sense. It makes no sense to me why next generation, like Xbox Series X comes out and they don't go, you just pay one flat rate for Xbox Live Gold, Xbox Game Pass, and Project X Cloud, and that's it. Like, we're not going to nickel and dime you about like your onesie twosie thing. Like just make it easy for me. Like, just make me pay one rate. Like, so that's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be interesting to see what Sony does in response to that. What makes Stadia interesting too, and all these things is like, how do you like to play? One of the things I'm realizing, and I posted this on my blog this week as well, is like, I mean, what Prime mentioned notwithstanding, like 4K on a PC monitor that I'm only sitting 3 or 4 feet away from doesn't make any difference to me. Like things are too small. There are apps that don't scale. There are apps that scale when they scale wonky. Makes sense when I'm looking at a 40-inch TV, right? So that now makes a difference in my gaming ecosystem. What does that mean for Stadia? Right, one of the big pluses of Stadia, again, depending on what you have and what you don't have. I think a lot of people who were commenting on Stadia, not you, Prime, but some other denizens out in the media, comment on Stadia when they have everything, right? That's not necessarily who Stadia is for. Stadia is for people who don't have stuff, right? So again, I go back to, is Stadia an attractive thing for a person who doesn't have stuff and doesn't like to own stuff and doesn't plan on getting stuff, right? They don't have to. They probably have a 4K TV because they probably also watch television, right? Do they just buy the 4K TV and the Stadia thing and they come home? On top of that, they come home and they don't have to do what we do, which is we dump a certain number of hours every week into PC self sysadmin, right? So that's a thing. Like I struggled yesterday with like a laptop that acted like it didn't want to do what it needed to do, and I was on this computer early today and it acted like it didn't do what it needed to do. I just took a Logitech keyboard and mouse over into the utility room because it wasn't doing it. Like so, the Stadia person comes home, grabs a controller, sits in front of their 4K TV, presses the button, it comes up. They don't have to worry about a patch, blah 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 blah. Let's talk about Assassin's Creed. Really quickly, as we are going to, I'm not going to go article by article, but the big thing is, as we suspected, I'm pretty sure was the case, Assassin's Creed next up is Valhalla. It's Viking oriented. There's a television show currently running of the same thing, so maybe as cultures get popular, Assassin's Creed stuff gets popular, or maybe Assassin's Creed makes the things popular. I don't know. So, surprised there's not Assassin's Creed. Have we done Assassin's Creed Rome?
Not necessarily, not ancient Rome, right? We've been in Rome in with Ezio. We've had Rome occupiers in Origins. So in Egypt. So adjacent.
Okay, so this is a weird year. We talk about Ubisoft is likely to show up. First of all, have they talked about a release date for this thing? Is it this year or is it next year?
They've said fall or winter of 2020. So yes, holiday. It's coming out.
Okay, we all know the Ubisoft shtick. It is coming to next-gen consoles. It's going to be on PS5. It's going to be on Series X. It's going to be on PC. Exclusive agreement signed with Epic, which means it's coming to the Epic Store as an exclusive for some period of time. Eventually it'll show up on Steam. What do you guys think? What have you seen? What interests you? What doesn't interest you? Do you care? Do you not care? Where do you sit with this? DBQ, we'll start with you.
So I'll say I'm interested because these are the Assassin's Creed Origin developers who I really logged a number of hours with. I've logged even more hours with Odyssey. I'm curious if it moves in that Odyssey direction where there's some type of choice and narrative piece there, or if it just kind of propels you forward. Origins was a great game, and this potentially could be as well. I gotta say, I was with the announcement trailer. I thought I was actually going to see silly me. I thought I was going to see gameplay and not just
Come
a
on.
pre-rendered 3D, beautiful cutscene. But I didn't enjoy the reveal until the very end, and then I went, okay, yeah, I'm going to keep paying attention because right at the end where the hidden blade comes out, and I'm like, okay, I'm back in Assassin's Creed me. Let's go. So yeah, I'm curious to see what happens.
And next week for gameplay, announcement right before we went live actually was dropped on Twitter that I saw that we should expect gameplay next week.
Okay.
Is this a thing? Prime. Same question for you, but I'll add on to that. Is this a thing? Like, has Assassin's Creed achieved the level of zeitgeist where it is an important thing when it is announced each year? Like, has it transcended from just being like a commodity? Like, there was a period of time where it was like it was just a thing, right? Like Call of Duty, right?
Like, it was Call of Duty, yeah. That's what I was saying, yeah. Because it was coming out every year. I think for a set of people, yeah. I don't think of like in general, like this is like, oh, Assassin's Creed, so everybody's just going to stop what they're doing. But I mean, it's still obviously a very popular game, obviously since they're still making them. But I think maybe Ubisoft's kind of generated that because now they've started, doing the 2 to 3 year cycles in between each game. Well, sort of, I guess, kind of Origins and Odyssey was like back to back, but then before I think Origins was like what 2 or 3 years, and then now this one's so now this one's what 2 years too. So they're maybe it's an artificial kind of a thing, but I mean, like I said, I think they've always been popular. I mean, obviously since they're still making them, but I think it's still a big deal to some people out there. And just me personally, I played a little bit of Odyssey. Actually on Stadia, speaking of Stadia, when it was free, when they were kind of demoing that service or testing that service out before it was actually called Stadia. And I liked the game. I played, I don't know if there was a counter there, but I think I probably played like 3 or 4 hours or so of it, and I really enjoyed it. It was a very fun game. So maybe I'll get into this one. Just kind of like I said in the chat, though. I mean, like Vikings and stealth, I don't think they go together. Me personally, and kind of like you were saying, like I guess because it should be called like an adventure creator, some kind of adventure game now, because that's kind of what it's turned into. But like in Odyssey, you're still able to do like assassin, do the stealth stuff if you wanted to. Obviously you could just go full bore, into a camp or something. Usually this probably wasn't a good idea, but most of the time you can make it work. You can always just run away too. I mean, if you needed to, which is always an option. But yeah, I mean, I might check it out, possibly, but it's for me at least, it's not like a huge deal right now.
So we're running a little long, but DBQ, I do want to ask you. So there was also information released that the progression model has also changed. I don't know. I don't necessarily know that we're going to get a big window pane with a big skill tree this time, or I think more so what I read was that instead of it being about you picking a thing, it's about what you use. So for instance, I do love that from Call of Duty, and it's one of the reasons why I'm back into Call of Duty is use submachine guns more, and you will see yourself level up in submachine guns more. It really sucks when you want to level up with the shotgun, right? That you have to run around with a relatively weak shotgun, being picked off by people from long range, right? Yada yada. So, what do you think about the change in the progression model? Since we spend so much time on this show talking about progression models.
Yeah, as a fan of gas powered games and the original Dungeon Siege, I can get behind this, right? Like that idea of if I'm going to use melee, if I'm going to use magic, if I'm going to use range, that's what's going to level up. I can see where it works in an Assassin's Creed game if it is big and sprawling, because it gives you a reason to go out and do some of those lower level quests that you may have gone past, but it's something where you can come back with a different type of weapon or a different type of ability and try to do that in a way that helps level that up. Whether that's how it plays out will be a whole nother thing. Yeah, I like the idea behind it. I think that the existing skill tree for the last two games was either you would min max it or you got so far into one that it wasn't worthwhile to get back out of. So you were kind of locked into a certain play style. So we'll see. I am curious. I think the history aspect of the Assassin's Creed series allows it to stretch a little bit, punch above its weight a little bit, and attract people because it has a broader reach. Whether or not those people actually play it or just kind of look at it and go, "Huh, Vikings," but we'll see.
Hey, so next week we'll be doing a GX show episode. We're going to change seats and orders around here. That one's going to be hosted by DBQ. Osiris Prime and myself will be his co-hosts, co-pilots in seats 2 and 3. Expect us to talk about Halo Master Chief Collection on PC, Ori and the Will of the Wisps on both PC and Xbox, as well as World of Warships. Prime, what do you think you might be talking about next week?
I was going to do Skyrim for
Okay.
our Pix Plays, yeah.
There you go. Speaking of Pix Plays, games are ported, as we've talked about tonight, all over the place, right? From Stadia to Xbox, maybe not so much, maybe probably the other way around. From Xbox to Stadia, from PC to Stadia, that's been a thing. There was a lot of Sturm and Drang and conversation, in years past about games that were designed with a console aesthetic in mind and then were ported to PC and how that didn't play well, how things were sometimes made very hyper complicated on the PC, and then when you attempt to port them to console, either you have to dumb some of those things down for the console resolution and things like that nature. It was always a problem. It's often been weaponized, used as a derogatory comment. Not so much, I would contend, in this day and age. A lot of those design ethoses are parallel. One platform isn't necessarily disadvantaged over the other. So our assignment over the last week and into next week before that GX show is to think about playing and spending some time with a multi-platform or staggered release, something that was ported. Not necessarily a multi-platform release. So we're primarily talking about mostly about port. So it was released on a platform and then was ported later to another platform. If you own a Switch, which all of us do, you have lots of things, because everything has been ported to Switch. In fact, there's a movement called port everything to Switch, the PES movement that's going on now. So that's a lot of what we will be talking about. Some of them, again, we may look at a multi-platform or a staggered release. I'm going to be looking at Ori and the Will of the Wisp and how that plays on Xbox versus how that plays on PC. We'll have some other things in the mix. As I mentioned, DBQ is looking at Halo Master Chief Collection on PC now because that started off on Xbox in most cases with those titles and then was eventually ported to the PC. Prime, as he mentioned, is going to be playing Skyrim, so a game that came out on one platform and has been ported several times over to other platforms. So join us for that. We will be back here next week with our alternating week show format. We did deep dive on news and trends tonight. Next week we'll be doing the GX show. Anything else to add, gentlemen, before I take us out of here?
Nope. Thanks for a good show.
Good.
Okay, my apologies that we ran a little over, but since you can't go anywhere, you may as well listen to us on the podcast. Once again, my name has been Agasicles Stamus from the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube, the Rounding Off Affinity Gaming channel on YouTube, aka Game Logic on Twitch, here tonight with my co-hosts on their behalf, Mr. DBqHams and Mr. Osiris Prime. We are the E2KG Network, or at least 75% of the E2KG network. The other 25% is off tonight, as he will be next week, but he will be with us in the month of May. Once again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Play the games that you like, stream the games that you love. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe out there. Until we are back next week, good night, good luck, and good gaming. We're out of here.